Okay, bring it on! Come on, we all know what's gonna happen next. I'm gonna get crushed by the one that's gonna... Hello, I'm Skull, and welcome back to... forget it, come on! It's making it worse! The fact I haven't gotten hurt by the first opening gag is so... So, with the impending doom looming overhead, let's take a look at an older video. I know, it's kind of taboo, but whatever, I don't really care. So, a couple of months ago, there was a video created by Crack.com, and apparently it was titled 5 Ways Gamers Are Holding Back the Games They Love. So yeah, it's one of those videos. Joy! Oh, great! Why is this a trend I keep coming across? Seriously, another video whose in-video title doesn't match up with the one on YouTube. Seriously, this is starting to puzzle me. Why is this becoming a trend? Wake me up inside!
Hey America, I'm Crack Senior Editor Josh Sargent, and I'm here to talk about video games. Specifically to say that we let them down, guys. They were supposed to be the future. Interactive storytelling was supposed to surpass movies as the new art form of a new generation, but we won't let it. We're holding them back because you can't admit that the level of violence in video games is smearing banana paste on your chest and calling yourself the king of France and insane. Look, game bros and game ladies, I don't think violence in video games is a bad thing. I just think it's weird that it's the only thing.
The only thing? Well, screw you too, puzzle games, visual novels, dating sims, mobile games, open world games, and the list goes on and on. Violence is a factor in some games, yes, but it isn't the only thing in video games. I highly doubt you'll see violence in a puzzle game.
What's the next stage?
That doesn't count! Also, you say that violence in games isn't a bad thing, but as we'll see in the rest of this video, it sure as hell doesn't come off as you making it out to be.
4 of the 5 best-selling games of 2015 are just about killing people.
Even though Grand Theft Auto is more open world and goofing around, and you do crime, what I'm saying is it isn't just about murder. Even then, best-selling doesn't mean representation of the gaming community. Hell, you know what game overtook Ocarina of Time as best game ever in 2015 from GameFAQs? Undertale. A game that actively punishes you for being violent by making you unable to get the good ending after you do the genocide route. Just because you can point to the highest grossing video game, that doesn't paint the entire market in those set of genres.
And when I say about, I mean the reason we play these games is so we can pretend to kill people. With guns specifically, because we don't want any innovation getting between us and scratching our murder itch.
Oh yes, that's why I play Pokemon, to kill the little buggers with guns! Seriously though, where the hell do you get off by saying why people play games is just for violence? You're going off the highest grossing numbers, but if people play games for violence, then games like Ace Attorney, Professor Layton, pretty much any dating sim, or other games like that wouldn't be touched by other players. Additionally, you haven't said why violence in games is bad. I mean, you're just stating that violence is bad and such. And murder itch? Well, that sounds like something Jack Thompson would spout out.
One Twitter user pointed out that at the 2000...
Wait a minute. That Twitter post. Oh my god!
You just give him one of these.
You never see it come back. You say that my mind is
Why are you painting Jonathan Macintosh, the guy whose mouth spews nothing but backwards logic and political agenda when anti-gamer rhetoric, as a regular Twitter user? The dude who has gone on record saying that he wants games that are not fun. There's a reason why the full Macintosh meme exists in the gaming sphere. He's known for saying some really stupid stuff.
In 2016 E3 Gaming Expo, 89% of the games shown were about solving problems with violent retribution. And people lost their shit at him just for saying that. Why? He's literally doing math. That's gaming.
Chicken attack! Chicken attack!
No, Macintosh wasn't doing math. All he was doing was spouting off random percentages that he pulled out of his nose to conflate his opinion. his normal shtick, mind you. It wasn't an isolated incident either. Macintosh has spouted off several things that caused controversy before this tweet even happened.
If anybody watching isn't a games folk, and if so, rude, I want to point out that games can do a lot of stuff that isn't murder. There's The Sims, there's Minecraft. That's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Really? Only 2 examples? I'm not the kind of guy who gets on this sort of thing, but...
Big biceps. Oh, it's a slap fight, is it? Oh, okay.
He got me!
They're not even good examples of no violence in video games, since you can murder the Sims in pretty funny ways, and you can kill other players in Minecraft as well as animals. But what really gets me is that you're expecting us to take you seriously when this is a scripted video and you couldn't be bothered to look for examples of games that don't have the player doing murder or killing. For example, puzzle games such as the Professor Layton series, where there is a little bit of violence, but it's not to the extent that it is in other games. Or how about the Madden series that you showed earlier, or racing games, or once again, visual novels. The list goes on, pal. Heck, I even probably mentioned the card game video games as well. You just named off 2 popular franchises that everyone knows because of their popularity in pop culture. And this may be me talking, but the fact that you only named 2 examples gives me the vibe that you're not an actual gamer, or at the very least you're not attached to the gaming landscape and don't know enough about gaming to give a competent opinion on the matter.
But we gamers still choose to spend our gaming dollar almost exclusively on recreations of the most f***ed up we see in the news. Now look, I enjoy casual violence as much as I enjoy cigarettes or toilet hooch, but of course it's weird. When we pretend it doesn't look weird, that just makes us look more weird.
Hey there, buddy, I'm gonna need a little citation. I don't know, look, yes, there are some games that do have the harshness of the real world in them. GTA and Call of Duty are prime examples off the top of my head, but there are games that do just as well that don't have that reflection. Need I bring up stuff like Pokemon, Undertale, more games that have critical praise and loved by many people who don't show large-scale murdering in the gameplay? Well, Undertale aside, but that game punishes you for being a murderous jackass.
Compare these games to the top 5 highest grossing movies of 2015.
Call us nitpick if you want, but that's not the correct order. Hell, Minions is number 7 on the highest grossing films, and here's my citation for that down below in the description. Mind you, he's talking about 2015. The numbers have been set in stone for almost a year now, so where the hell are you guys getting your research from? Because if you can't even get a simple fact like this right, why should I even trust what you're saying on other materials?
It's still mostly violence, but at least it's different kinds of violence. We have laser sword fights, dinosaur fights, car and gun fights, superhero fights, and I didn't see Minions, but I assume there's some graphic torture or something.
So your only complaint about the violence is that there isn't different types of violence? I'm sorry, but what? This is some mental gymnastics, since if violence in these movies is okay where people get torn apart by dinosaurs or get stabbed with lightsabers, why are these okay in movies but not in video games? Because I can remember there being quite a few video games where people get torn apart by dinosaurs. Hello, Dino Crisis!
I get it though. This is a sensitive topic for a lot of people because we remember a time when people were trying to make video games not a thing anymore.
Chicken attack, chicken attack.
We're an important part of the economy now, so at the risk of sounding cynical, even if scientists wearing lab coats and speaking in European accents conclusively proved that video games caused real-world violence, they probably still wouldn't take them away. Because gaming is expensive enough now to be a rich people hobby, and rich people hobbies can be literally anything. We're safe. Who cares? So let's just go full punk rock and admit that gaming is super
Video games are a rich person's hobby? That is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. It's an everyman hobby. Just because the industry is big doesn't mean that it's just for rich people. Anything can be classified as a rich person's hobby, but that doesn't mean jack. I can pick up a classic console for under $100 and a game right now if I wanted to from a local store, or I can go onto Steam and get games on sale, or even go to a Nintendo eShop and pick up a game for less than $3. PC parts are getting cheaper by the day, making it a lot more accessible for average people to play.
The anger thing probably isn't a coincidence. Already, I know that some of you are questioning whether I'm a true gamesman. So let me be clear here and say that my gamer cred is unfucking impeachable.
Yeah, keep telling yourself that, pal.
When I learned the true meaning of loyalty and friendship, it wasn't because some friends and I discovered a dead body in the woods. It was from Minsk in Baldur's Gate and his unwavering devotion to Boo the miniature giant space hamster. So step up.
Congrats! You got one gaming fact from a game that was released in 2000. How about something more modern to show that you're actually familiar with the current landscape? I'm not trying to be that guy who's going to demand you know everything from every game, but just because you can name one specific scene in a game doesn't mean you have gamer cred. Heck, I could even look on the wiki or click on a clip on YouTube about this, and I could claim that I'm a huge fan of Baldur's Gate. It wouldn't be true, but I could still make that claim by saying that.
And yet, despite this obvious pedigree, I still don't like to call myself a gamer, because that word seems less associated with video games and more associated with being a dick on the internet. In fact, Google literally autocompletes the word gamer to Gamergate, which was an internet harassment campaign with ties to white supremacy groups. So
Look, I'm not a huge fan of Gamergate. I wasn't really a part of the whole thing, but it wasn't an internet harassment campaign. It was more of a movement against the corruption of gaming journalism, and there are a ton of videos on YouTube that talk about what Gamergate is and how the media demonized gamers. I'm not gonna lie that there are some jerks in that community. I mean, this is kind of a blatant attempt to push a narrative of the movement.
I can also tell you anecdotally that writing about video games attracts way more internet hate than writing about anything else. Compare the comments under a "this movie is sexist" article to the "this video game is sexist" article on literally any website, and you'll see the difference.
You want to give some actual evidence of these comments? Look, when you're making a claim like this, you're left with the burden of proof. Otherwise, this claim can easily be dismissed, and how the guy was placed on the screen, I felt as though there was supposed to be an example, but someone forgot to put it in.
Also, everybody knows this. Even
Oh hey, it's Arthur Chu! Well, not as notorious as Macintosh, going with the whole gamers are dead, dead, dead in his words, and trying to diss Total Biscuit and comparing the PC master race to Nazis. It's like people shut off their brains when they're going on Twitter. Can we classify this as a psychological thing nowadays, people?
That's not a coincidence. And that certain point was 6 years ago, and people started advertising to us using our inability to control our temper as their gimmick.
Oh yes, a hyperbolic game advertisement. That totally happens in real life. Yay.
Anyway, games. Mostly about killing. Gamers. Mostly mad all the time. Maybe a link. Not a crazy idea. So
Weasel words are fun, kids. Most games, most gamers, not a shred of evidence.
here's our opportunity to be better than most professional sports and tackle an obvious problem head on before anybody gets hurt. We don't actually care about story. I've read hundreds, probably, of articles about why video game stories are so bad. Why, the articles ask. Why are they so bad? I'll tell you. It's because we gamers, you and me, don't give a f***. It's not why we play, and it never has been, and it never will be. The stories don't matter to us.
Whoa, 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 whoa! Don't lump a personal preference and lump it in with the whole group now. And you better not try that with me, pal. They don't matter to you. Don't use terms like us or we, because that's a presumption on your part, and proves that you don't know a damn thing about games or gamers. Some gamers do care about stories. Some gamers don't. If there wasn't any care for story, then gamers wouldn't have cared or made a huge stink about the ending to Mass Effect 3. Hell, I could bring up RPGs, story-based games, mind you, like Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, Final Fantasy, more recent games outside of RPGs, Soma having a great story, or Silent Hill 2. I know that's an older example, but shut up. And many, many other games. And by the by, way to actually show evidence of articles that have already said that the stories are bad when that's completely subjective interpretations and not a fact. While I will say that games don't need stories to be fun, there are a ton of story-based games that are good and will drive players to play because they get attached to the characters, the plots, and other elements of good writing. I hate to use this example again, but Undertale was best known for its characters that people still love even after a year of its release.
Now, games have good stories. Last of Us has a cool story, and if you watch all the cutscenes on YouTube, it's a pretty good movie. In fact, you could make the argument that that's the best way to enjoy The Last of Us' story. Want proof? I'm making that argument right now. You just got told, welcome to the internet, I am your god.
Well, that explains why so many people go atheist nowadays. But to address your point, you bring up an example of a game that has a good story after saying that games don't have good stories. So which is it? You're flopping around more than a magic card.
Anyway, I gotta spoil this game for you. You spend most of The Last of Us as a big tough man named Joel protecting Ellie, a young girl. At the end, you find out that the only way to cure the world's zombie problem is to kill Ellie. But Joel can't let that happen, and he kills a bunch of scientists, escapes with Ellie, and lies to her about what happened. For the ending to work emotionally, like as a story, you have to believe that Joel sees Ellie as vulnerable and feels a responsibility to protect her. And yet, she's invincible during the entire game. She can't get hurt or even seen by enemies because if they could see her, the whole game would have been a huge pain in the ass.
Now, this proves to me that you don't know what you're talking about since, well, yes, during the time you play as Joel, Ellie can't get hurt. But you forget to mention that during the time you play as Ellie, she can die. In addition, gameplay comes first in story-based games. If Ellie was constantly dying in the games and forcing the players to restart, frustration would take over and cause people to rage quit the game. There's a reason why escort missions are hated so much in gaming, and building a game based around that would die quickly. So the game developers had to come up with a way to make sure that it doesn't go the way during actual gameplay. Does it break immersion a little bit? Debatable, but at the same time you also have to consider that, hey, people need to play and not rage quit.
So a game can't compromise the fun for the sake of the story, even when the game's main appeal is the story. Why?
Because unlike movies, games are interactive, meaning that there's another element that needs to be taken into account when designing games. Gameplay should come first in a game, making sure that the players don't rage quit the game and demand their money back.
Because we just want to beat people to death with a baseball bat. Again, no judgment, because that's awesome, but that's still why we're playing.
Oh, so we're back to the violence thing. Okay. Sometimes, yeah, but just because you want to kill zombies in a game, that doesn't mean you have to go all Frank West on actual people.
And the thing is, if we don't like a game's story that gets in the way of the gameplay, that means we don't actually care if games are art or not.
Come on, Tetris, hit me! Hit me!
Remember when Roger Ebert said that video games could never be art? We got all mad for that stupid old man because he doesn't even play video games. And then remember how we spent the next decade doing nothing to prove him wrong?
Nothing? Are you blind? You cannot tell me that games like Okami, a game where Japanese oil-based painting is used in actual gameplay and has references to Japanese ink drawing, isn't art. You cannot tell me that games that spend thousands of hours building the graphics of worlds are not art, slaving in front of computer screens. While graphics aren't a key component, graphics can still make a good game great.
Yes, video games can be art, and there are a ton of incredibly talented artists working in the industry, but we don't care.
Again with this part, don't act like you speak for all gamers. I didn't like it when Angry Joe did it, I didn't like it when MatPat was representative of gamers, and I actually hold those two in respect, but you? Saying that gamers don't care about art, trying to tell people what gamers think with no actual evidence? I honestly don't know what to see what you're going at anymore.
And when we pretend to, we sound like a teenager explaining that watermelon vodka is actually good liquor. Look, maybe Destiny has a rich and evocative mythology, but that's not what keeps people signing in every week. They're just doing that to get their fat loot so they can fight the tougher monster, and that, my friends, is different.
Despite the fact that Destiny was panned heavily for its lack of a story and how DLC had to be used to fix that.
That's the designer putting us in a Skinner box and getting us addicted to simulated accomplishments. I'm not sure what emotional truth you can get out of spending all day leveling up, but I do know that almost every video game review I've ever read has talked about whether the game hooks you and its replay value. Look, if we really cared about art, we wouldn't have reacted to Mass Effect 3's ending by demanding that they patch it in a way that lets us fulfill our power fantasy.
It wasn't because of a lack of power fantasy, it was panned because the endings were all available were the same for a difference of coloring. It wrapped up things horribly, made plot holes, and frankly eliminated one of the game's most biggest features: choice! I didn't even play the Mass Effect series, and now I know this. The fact that gamers hated this, and the fact they complained about this, and the fact they actually tried to change what they did in the games, proves that gamers do care about narrative and art. Or at least, some of them do. Yeah, if you want an example of the complaints, go check out Angry Joe's video on it in the comments in that section.
And we wouldn't have created a petition to get a review of Uncharted 4 removed because we disagreed with it. Because a big part of art is personal interpretation, not consensus. Demanding consensus is actually one of the most anti-art things you can do.
So you painting most games as violent falls into this category?
So if being fun and distracting is all it takes for something to count as art, then Jerry Springer counts as art, and professional wrestling, and making list-based comedy videos for the internet.
It's not. It's the content of the media. It's not just about fun and distractions. There are more factors in it. As for professional wrestling thing...
Wait, so the only thing professional wrestling is that it's fun and distracting? Okay, guess Inception isn't art either then. Doesn't matter if the ending is ambiguous, it doesn't matter how much work goes into the visual presentation of new ideas. It's not art because it still primarily solves its conflicts with violence. Never mind the amount of coordination and skill it takes to enact the violence in professional wrestling without serious injuries. And even then, they aren't always successful. Oh, and I see your example is a John Cena match. Well, if you associate all professional wrestling with that particular style, then sir, I'd like you to go find a match between Will Ospreay and Ricochet. But yeah, just Google that match. On top of the match itself, you'll find debates among wrestlers about the merits of that particular match. Some said it wasn't professional wrestling, but instead more like an acrobatics routine, which is essentially you saying that one of the earliest forms of performance art isn't art, by the way. And others say that it redefines professional wrestling itself, which shows that professional wrestling is an evolving art form. And that's just using a match to prove you wrong. Don't get me started on storylines that attempted political commentary, including ones in WWE. Professional wrestling can be analyzed from an artistic perspective. People do it all the time. And if that's not art, then neither is anything that uses violence as a key part of its narrative. So, you know, the vast majority of high-grossing films released after 1989.
Thank you, Boone.
And just as an aside, Metal Gear Solid creator Hideo Kojima also thinks that games aren't art, and he's the guy who allowed me to create the most beautiful moment I have ever seen on a TV screen.
That's actually a bit of a weird opinion, actually. Since in 2006, Kojima said that games aren't art, but when his work is now in the Smithsonian Museum, he said games are collaborative art, which was taken in 2012. Yeah, way to use an outdated information. Link below to where I got the information, and if it's outdated again, please let me know in the comments below. He says it's more of a service than art, and Kojima once said that art belongs in a museum, which if we use his logic, is now art because it is in a museum. In addition, from your own citing, Kojima goes on to say that it's not art, but I guess the way of providing service with that video game is an artistic style, a form of art. Saying that Kojima doesn't think games aren't art is kind of stupid since he contradicts himself in his original quote, and in more recent times says that they are a form of art, collaborative. It's not as simple as saying he doesn't think games aren't art. But even if he did, that's just an opinion and not a fact. It's an influential opinion for sure, but it's not the be-all, end-all if games are or are not art.
Video games are not relaxing.
Well, that's kind of an overgeneralization right there.
When you talk to people about video games and bring up the stuff I've brought up, the violence, the lack of attention to story, the argument often becomes that they are a stress reliever. They're relaxing. You feel pent-up rage and then you play video games and you feel relaxed. The truth is, that's not how anger, stress relief, or relaxation work.
Gonna provide some actual proof? No, of course not.
When you indulge in a violent video game fantasy, you're stimulating your brain but not your body in such a way that it not only exacerbates the frustration and anger, but associates frustration and anger with aggression in a way that is unhealthy in the long term because aggression is unhealthy.
Despite the fact that there are a ton of games that actually stimulate the body, do I need to bring up No More Heroes on the Wii?
Fuckhead!
Or how about any game on the Wii that uses the Wii remote, like Mad World? Violent games that require you to actually move your body and use it. Even then, if I watch a violent movie or read a book with violence in it, wouldn't that have the same effect as using your logic?
Not that it really matters, because I found an article online that came out 2 months before this video did that talks about how video games can actually act as de-stressors. It does provide resources, stories, and other things to back up its points. And also, it backs my point up, and I'm at least giving you an example of what I'm talking about, instead of just making you guys believe me when I say this stuff. I'm at least providing references.
Look, I know the research is conflicted. And yes, I know who Craig Anderson and Christopher Ferguson are. If you don't Google it, it's boring. But if you put that aside, then you already know the truth.
Yeah, let's just ignore the actual evidence to the side and say whatever we want. It's the truth!
So let's just be honest. Games can be exciting, exhilarating, and infuriating, but they're not relaxing. None of us have ever drifted off to sleep playing Mario.
What about games that allow you to play with friends? Spending time with friends to do is a way to have fun and take your mind off in the real world. You know, there's a reason why there's something called escapist fiction that applies to video games as well.
We may have passed out face down on our keyboard playing EverQuest, but it's kind of different. Games are designed to be addictive. We sound like f***ing junkies when we say we find them relaxing and that they relieve our stress.
Games are a drug. People can get addicted to pretty much anything. Food, sex, pretty much anything that can stimulate the body. Not just video games, you can make that argument for anything!
Like we just need a hit of Call of Duty to take the edge off. So let's be honest. There's nothing wrong with saying that you play them for fun. There's nothing wrong with saying that we like ripping a demon's head in half because we're broken inside. I mean, it's better than admitting we're addicted to something.
Fuckhead!
I can't take him serious. He generalizes. He says stuff that's incredibly insulting to gamers and people, and I don't believe for a second that he is a gamer. He barely did any research. He said things that come off as ignorant and downright a slap to the face. Now I could go off and scream my head off, but the dislikes of the video have already given that. Now I think I kind of forgot something.